Okay, Jeff, it's still early, very early in the Major League season, only mid-April, but we've got yet another week in the books. And earlier, I remember we were talking about Roy Halladay, Tim Lincecum, and C.C. Sabathia. Now, Sabathia seems to be graduating from that, what's going to happen with him class, although his velocity was down and maybe will be down for the foreseeable future. But you certainly have to take C.C. Sabathia out of the Roy Halladay class right now. What about Matt Cain? Just got shelled again today. Another guy who's had two bad starts out of three and was almost bulletproof heading into this year for several seasons.
I don't know for sure. The thing that's different today than his earlier blow-up start was the blow-up start against the Cardinals. It was death by singles. It just seemed like there was just I could chalk that all up to luck. Today, it's the home runs by the Brewers. Now, one thing about Cain is, he and Bumgarner both actually had pretty significant home road splits. So there's some of that there. But yeah, this is rough. This is, he had a couple of dog outings like this in the fall last year too, and I don't know if he's, I don't think he's really a big at-risk guy, but at the same time, maybe he's lost a little bit of an edge. I don't know. If I owned Cain, I wouldn't panic too much. However, I don't own Cain, so I'm reveling in it right now.
Well, let me ask you this. Obviously before the season, you had Cain ranked way ahead of Matt Harvey, for example. Who would you take now the rest of the way?
I'd go Cain because better team, just so much experience to fall back upon. The first time Harvey gets hit hard, I want to see how he reacts. Because, at the end of the day, there's very few pitchers that aren't going to have this treatment. They're all going to get hit hard at one or two starts in the year. It's how they react to that, how they respond to that. It's kind of interesting. I like Harvey a lot. I think in a keeper league, that question's tougher than in a redraft league. In a redraft league, I'll still stick with Cain.
Okay, and Cain is not that old either. The keeper league, it's not like he's,
incredibly durable, all that, yeah.
Or super volcano before Matt Cain has to retire, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so you have Cain, but you drop him down, say below you, Darvish. How about Cain or C.C. Sabathia, or who do you take between those two?
Good question, especially because I had Sabathia significantly lower than many to start the season. Now I'm kind of coming around to that. Hey, he's adjusting to this new level, if you will. I'll still say Cain because of NL and the ballpark, but it's closer than it used to be. It's not like Sabathia can't pitch in that ballpark. He's done it plenty of times, but I guess there's just a small edge. I think, last year I had Sabathia ahead of Cain, though, so I guess it's like 55-45 Cain.
Okay. The Yankee Stadium is a real tough place to pitch, but I think for lefties it's not so bad. Look what Andy Pettit's done over his career, and Sabathia's been fine there. And they just haven't had that many great lefties. Sort of lefties that are borderline Hall of Fame case. So I think Sabathia, we'll see. He's got a couple more years left, but will make the Hall of Fame. But that kind of guy when he's lefty, the lefties are already at a disadvantage, and then to hit to left field for a right-handed batter in Yankee Stadium is kind of tough. It's not a great home run park for right-handed hitters.
That's true.
Okay. Well, what about last night? We had Max Scherzer going against Felix Hernandez, and it was an amazing pitchers. Do I think that might be the most strikeouts ever in a game? There are 40 strikeouts in that 14-inning game, 12 for Scherzer, 12 for Hernandez. Felix Hernandez's velocity is also way down. Nobody's talking about it because there's absolutely nothing wrong with the results. What do you make of that? And what are the obviously velocity matters, but what are the cases? What are the exceptions when velocity doesn't seem to matter, like Sabathia this year and Felix Hernandez this year so far?
No, look at what Jared Weaver's been working in for the last 5 years, but he dropped off even farther last year. I was staying away from Weaver this year because of those reasons. Now I can't be right or wrong. It's just because he had a fluke injury instead. I don't know how to define when it's an exception, when it's something that's telling. Except, hey, he's an elite guy. Felix has been an inner circle guy ever since he's gotten called up. He got called up so young too. I want to compare his career track versus Jose Fernandez's in 5 years from now. Well,
Sabathia got called up really early too, and they're all doom and gloom. His arm's going to fall off, and until last year he had no problems. And last year he still had a great year and got some very minor cleanup surgery, and so far it doesn't seem to be a big deal, except the velocity is down. Same with Felix Hernandez. You point out Weaver throwing 88, 87, whatever it is that he throws, and being such a good pitcher. I remember Sean Markham having a good couple seasons in the AL East when the AL East was really tough, when the Yankees and Red Sox were totally loaded. And someone said he threw 89, 90, but because of his weird release point or something else and how far he was when he strode to the plate, it was actually effectively, in terms of the amount of time between when the ball came out of his hand and crossed the plate, 92, 93. And that, velocity reading isn't the only thing. And, Tim Lincecum has a ridiculously long stride. And so even though he was kind of a small guy and throwing, low to mid-90s at the highest, and now he's slower than that, obviously, his ball seemed faster. Is there something to that maybe Sabathia being, 6'9" or whatever he is, 6'7", maybe his ball is faster than what he's clocked at?
Yeah, of course there's something to that. And there's also, being able to disguise the ball, disguise the delivery, prevent the hitter from seeing the ball, seeing the rotation on the ball, being able to do that pitch recognition. That's why a guy like Josh Collman can stay in the majors for so long and be effective. He's been really good this year, by the way. We saw the comparison of Mike Fiers to Josh Collman last year. It's delivery matters. Like you said, where you release it can change the perception of the velocity too. Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Let's move on to a few other pitchers. The reason I'm talking pitching, and we'll get to hitting in a second, is that I feel like pitching, it's always nerve-wracking. If your pitcher is just dominating and there's nothing wrong with him, okay, no problem. I don't think anyone's worried about Clayton Kershaw after getting knocked around by the Padres last night. I don't think anyone's thinking, okay, maybe what's going on with him. But almost anybody else has a couple of bad starts. Strasburg looked better in his last start, but this pitch-to-contact stuff, not looking that dominant. Even with him, I'm like, well, what's going on? Matt Cain, I'd be a little nervous. Cole Hamels, even the better last start he had wasn't great after two terrible starts. David Price hasn't looked that sharp.
Right.
With pitching, it's just it makes you very nervous, when your guys don't do well. Now, I'll tell you something about R.A. Dickey, another struggling guy who was a star last year. I saw a tweet. He had like a 5.91 ERA through his first three starts last year and like 5.71 or two starts, 5.71 this year. So no worse than he was last year even. Yeah,
exactly. And it's funny. Certain pitchers might. I've always heard knuckleball pitchers don't like the cold. They don't do as well when it's cold out. Of course, he got raked at home, so I don't know how much inside a dome. So it may not be really a controlling factor. But power pitchers has always been a contention that power. I've referred to this a few times, but Bill James in his old baseball abstracts would talk about how some power pitchers don't do well in the cold, which is counterintuitive because you would think hitters hate to face these guys, right? That they would hate to deal with the stinging on the hands and all that, but for whatever reason, it's actually like the guys like Tom Glavine that do really well in April. So, you don't want to overreact to two or three starts slow starts by Steven Strasburg when two of those three starts were actually pretty decent.
Right, but they were like pitch-to-contact starts. Right,
but at the same time, maybe he's changing his approach.
No one wants to see that. No one wants to see Steven Strasburg become Jordan Zimmerman. And Jordan Zimmerman's a good pitcher, but nobody wants to see him become Jordan Zimmerman. That's not it's not what you bargained for at the draft table. It's not as valuable when you're striking out 11 guys a game, and in 7 innings you're striking out 11 guys. So 7 times 3 is 21. You only need to get 10 ball and play outs to get through 7 innings. That's really hard to score runs on.
Yeah, especially when you take him at the 17th pick overall in a $100,000 grand prize draft, that I may or may not have done.